Today, we're going to dive into a fascinating paradox, why some of the most brilliant minds on the planet can be the most fragile when they fail. And, maybe more importantly, how that exact moment of breaking down might just be the secret to their greatest strength.
You've probably heard this phrase before. Maybe you've even said it. Imagine the smartest person you know, the genius in the room, after their first real, soul-crushing failure. Someone says this, trying to help, but what they're actually doing is so much worse. They're basically telling them their suffering isn't valid. They're dismissing the cognitive trauma that is literally shutting down their nervous system. And the worst part? The genius believes them, so they learn to suffer in silence, and it eats them alive.
So, to really get why this happens, let's start with a story. And for some of you listening, this might feel, well, a little too familiar.
Let's meet Adrian. His whole life, his entire identity has been built around one thing: being the smart one. School was a breeze. Problems just kind of solved themselves in his head. But because he was always praised for his natural talent, he never had to build up any resilience. He never developed the muscle for what to do when just being smart wasn't enough.
And then, at 28, it happens. Boom! A huge project, something he poured his heart and soul into, gets rejected. Now, for most of us, that's a really bad day. For Adrian, it's a complete implosion of his reality. If he isn't the smart guy who always succeeds, then who is he? Suddenly, his greatest asset, his own mind, turns on him, trapping him in these vicious, toxic loops of overthinking.
So why does Adrian's world just completely shatter? Well, it comes down to something called a fixed intelligence mindset. This is the deep-seated belief that your intelligence is something you're just born with, that it's set in stone. So when a failure happens, it isn't just an event. It's not "I failed." It becomes an identity. I am a failure. It's seen as proof that you are and always will be fundamentally flawed.
But this isn't just a simple change in perspective. Oh no. There are some deep biological reasons for why this reaction is so incredibly intense. Let's peel back the layers and look at the actual science behind this breakdown.
At the heart of it all is a concept called asynchronous development. It's a real hallmark of giftedness. All it really means is that different parts of a person grow at wildly different speeds. So their brain, their intellect, might be light years ahead, but their emotional skills, their ability to cope, it can be lagging way, way behind. This right here gives you a perfect visual of that mismatch. I mean, just imagine having the mental horsepower to understand incredibly complex global issues, but you're stuck with the emotional toolkit of a kid to actually process all the anxiety that comes with that knowledge. This huge gap between what you can understand and what you can actually handle, well, it's a recipe for absolute chaos inside your own head. And now, let's layer something else on top of that. A biological reality known as overexcitabilities. Now, this isn't just about being a little intense or sensitive. No, this is a neurological thing. Your nervous system is basically hardwired to have a much stronger response to, well, everything. It's like you experience life in high definition, which is amazing, but it also means everything can be way more overwhelming. And you can see here how this all plays out. With intellectual overexcitability, a failure isn't just a mistake. It's something you have to obsessively analyze from every single angle. Then imaginational overexcitability kicks in, and your brain starts creating these incredibly vivid worst-case scenarios. And then emotional overexcitability. That means you feel the shame of that failure with this crushing, corrosive intensity. It's not just a feeling, it's a full-body experience of tension and even physical pain.
And this is where your own brain's hardware can start to work against you. There's a part of our brain called the default mode network. It's what we use for self-reflection. But in these moments, it gets completely hijacked by worry. So what feels like you're doing some deep, productive thinking is actually just toxic rumination, an exhausting, endless loop of self-criticism that feels impossible to switch off.
The result is absolutely devastating. A highly intelligent person can use their own flawless logic to build a perfectly rational, airtight case for their own complete destruction. They can connect the dots from one tiny mistake on a report to getting fired to losing their home to being completely alone. And to them, this doesn't feel irrational. It feels like a logical forecast of what's to come.
Okay, so all of that intense internal struggle, it doesn't just happen in a bubble. Society plays a massive role in making the pain so much worse and creating this feeling of being totally and completely alone. A lot of this is driven by something called tall poppy syndrome. It's this weird, almost primal social instinct to criticize or cut down anyone who shines a little too brightly. There's this unspoken, uncomfortable bit of satisfaction that people can feel when the genius finally gets knocked down a peg.
And the consequences of living with that fear are just brutal. People learn to mask their true abilities just to fit in. This constant act leads to a deep-seated imposter syndrome, this feeling that you're a fraud who's about to be found out. And eventually, it leads to complete and utter burnout from the sheer exhaustion of hiding who you really are.
And here is the core paradox. The very label that's meant to be a positive thing, gifted, smart, it becomes a barrier. Society just assumes that if you have a high IQ, you must also have high resilience. And that assumption leads to those dismissive phrases like, "Oh, you'll figure it out," that force the pain underground and leave a person feeling profoundly isolated. Okay, I know this all sounds incredibly bleak, but what if this whole painful experience isn't a malfunction? What if it's the exact opposite? What if we can reframe this whole idea of a breakdown as something that's actually necessary, something productive?
I want you to really let this sink in. Your breakdown isn't a sign that you are weak or broken. It is an evolutionary process. It's a sign that you are in the middle of a massive developmental leap.
This whole idea comes from something called the theory of positive disintegration. And it suggests that for people who have this high potential for development, these intense crises aren't just likely, they're essential. That old, fragile identity that you built as a kid, the flawless, smart kid, it has to shatter into a million pieces so that a more authentic, more resilient self can be built from the ruins. So you see, the point isn't just about recovery. It's not about getting back to who you were. It's about rebuilding. It's about being reborn from the ruins of that old, fragile identity. Just look at the contrast right here. The old self, on the one hand, bases its entire worth on performance, on what other people think. It's incredibly fragile. But the new self, the one born from the crisis, its identity is based on its own internal values and character. It doesn't fear failure anymore. It learns from it. It's truly resilient.
And this is the ultimate thing to remember. Your intense, overwhelming response to failure is not a pathology. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is the price of admission for having a mind that sees more, feels more, and connects ideas in ways that most people simply can't.
So I want to leave you with this question. What if failure isn't the end of your story? What if it's the furnace, the fire that was needed to burn away all of the false expectations that were placed on you, finally allowing your true and far more powerful self to be born? So, please, stop apologizing for feeling everything so deeply. That depth is not a weakness. It is your greatest gift.